the Know-Nothing Party, the American Nativist Party. The white people had been here for 70 years. They were the ones that had captured the slaves. They had established the institution of slavery. They had murdered the Native Americans. They felt they had established and occupied, and they claimed this land for themselves. They didn't like the Germans and the Irish coming in, so they're white people right now. Today, Germans and Irish are clearly would be considered white, but they are speaking a different language. Whereas, you know, it's all English-speaking Christians, not exactly Protestant, Catholics, and agnostic people. So that's America, right? That's like the sort of predominant today, but also that's been the continuity. That's been how it is since the very beginning. So you have the White Anglo Protestants who eventually came here on Plymouth Rock, and then the Puritans are still going strong, right, with Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore, he was the last Whig president, but he was also a Know-Nothing. And why they called it Know-Nothing? And it wasn't because they didn't know nothing. They didn't know nothing, so it's just like the GOP, right, and Michelle Bachmann. They don't know nothing. But the idea was there was a secret organization. So this is like the Protestants, right, and they're trying to be like the Jesuits and the Freemasons, and there might still be know-nothing people today. It came from like the some sort of order of something of the snake or something from New York, and so you have the Protestants who's trying to come up with these established, because the Jesuits have been around forever, right? Catholic religion has been around forever, and the Jesuits are like the extreme element. So Guy Fawkes is looked upon as a revolutionary figure, not because he's a Catholic, but because he was overthrowing the monarchy, the hierarchy, the tyrant. And so if it took, Catholicism to overthrow tyranny, then the American people's all for it. Millard Fillmore is the 13th president since the very beginning of our country, 1850 to 1853, the last Whig president, last president not to be affiliated with either Democrat or Republican parties. So he's the last of a legacy of, not being Republicans and Democrats, and then that's all we have ever since. He's included the bottom 10 of the historical rankings of presidents, so like the crappiest president ever. There's actually Millard Fillmore cartoon strip, so I could tell it's a Republican, apologist. That cartoon film strip, which goes smack dab against Aaron McGruder. He's not allowed to put his Boondocks out in the comic strips. In fact, they kicked him out. So Aaron McGruder doesn't even own his own comic strip anymore, right? So what is up with that? Does that seem right to you? Does that sound? It doesn't sound right to me. Okay, so you have Millard Fillmore. He was Zachary Taylor's vice president. Zachary Taylor comes out of Louisville, Kentucky. So you're going to bring it back to Louisville, right? You have Zachary Taylor and white supremacy, white racism. I mean, it wasn't just the slaves and the Native Americans, but it was the Mexicans, the Mexican-American Wars. That Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor was, he redeems himself at the very end of his life, I think, for the Compromise of 1850. But during his presidency, he was an asshole. Or during his life, he was an asshole. He was a general. He was killing Mexicans, killing Native Americans, and so Zachary Taylor comes from Louisville. He was not born in Louisville, but he was raised there. That's where his homestead was. That's where he's buried. He assumed the presidency after Taylor's death. Millard Fillmore was a lawyer from Western New York State and an early member of the Whig Party. He served. Okay, so that's. As an anti-slavery moderate, he opposed abolitionist demands to exclude slavery from all the territory gained in the Mexican War. So he was an anti-slavery moderate. So he wasn't an abolitionist. In fact, Henry Clay had lost the presidency, and he blamed the abolitionist and the foreign vote. So Henry Clay, I think, could be a person that you could blame for spanning the sort of, the flames of hatred. You could also blame George Prentice. And again, another Louisville connection, right? Zachary Taylor's from Louisville. Bloody Monday is an 1855 Know-Nothing riot that happened in Louisville. And this last Louisville connection that I was making was something else. Damn it. So several Louisville connections, right? It's all about Louisville. This is all about, where we live. This is about our own city, right? This is about our city. So August 6, 1855 was during the election. The town of Louisville saw clashes between supporters the Democratic Party and the American Party, colloquially called the Know-Nothing Party. And they said at least 22 people killed. I've heard up to 300, so I round those up to more than 100. But I've heard report of more than 300, and we haven't had a list. And there was lots of newspapers, like nativist and German newspapers, who was writing about both of these events. So I think you could actually find a actual body count and name all the names, right? List the names of all the people that had died. What was that Lugo connection I was trying to make? You had the Zachary Taylor, Miller Fillmore. Daggone it. I was actually really excited about that one too. I don't know, maybe I'll watch it and say, oh yeah, there's where I was going, because it's all, okay, anyways, I'm going to just keep on going. Anyways, yeah, so it's important to know about what happens with Lugo, but I have a proposition, and I think Louisvillians, Kentuckians, they don't know shit about themselves. In fact, probably most states adopt the United States history as their own history, but each state has their own sort of things that, you know, their own, and that's, you know, our state is exactly the same. I do like making the connections of our state's history to the national history, but there's clearly a different narrative. There's clearly two different things that's going on between the two states, including Kentucky. Right from the get-go, American Revolution happened. We weren't necessarily fighting the English. We were fighting a lot of Indians and taking people's land, and it was wilderness, and it was the West, and it was the new, you know, frontier, right? So it was the beginning of the march to the manifest destiny. So lots of Indian slaughter, Indian battles, and then they blamed, you know, they said that they were for the British, right, if they killed all the natives. So that's, in the very beginning, that's not, you know, American history is not, that's not Washington as a hero, and Washington never took 1 foot inside of Kentucky. You had Simon Girty, he was fighting, right? You had Chief Pluckey, he gave us life during the battle in 1776, right, in Kentucky. And then you have all these stations and all these new settlements, and then eventually the state is formed, and then you get, you know, what you see today. Then you have Zachary Taylor in the 1850s, and then, was I going to make a connection till today? Yeah, I'm not going to fucking waste everybody's time trying to figure out my lost ideas. Just make sure when I get a hold of the idea to spit it out there, and then try to be all clever. Okay. So the 1855 Know-Nothing Riots were the most important event that ever happened ever, right? It's the Louisville Riots of August 1855. This is Kentucky Through the Centuries, which has a lot of actually incredible primary source documents inside of it. I would, if I had a Kentucky history course, this actually should be for the Kentucky history course, but I'm not going to do all of them because I'm going to go on and on. I don't know, man. 10. I'll do 10 total, but I'm not going to do any more than 10. I got homework to actually finish, so I can't do 10. But until I'm finished speaking with about all the stuff I want to say. So nativism is anti-foreignism, right? I heard one girl who was like from Alabama, was like that foreigner, and it was a white chick. It was like in Estonia. It was like, you know, she's like that foreigner, and she was like, oh, crappy about it. And like there was a gay dude, and he was kind of like, okay. And she's a white woman, so you know she's allowed to be a racist, backwards, bigoted butthole. So the dominant ethnic group of Kentucky from the beginning was described as white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So they were WASP, right from the get-go, right? Daniel Boone, WASP. Simon Kenton, WASP. You had the first governor of Kentucky, WASP. Who was it? Isaac Shelby, right? Isaac Shelby, WASP. So you got all these WASP in Kentucky, right? Then the Irish, German Catholics. Whoa, what is this? How dare you, Irish, German Catholic? Get the hell out of here. So, that's some bullshit, you know? That's how racist America was. So, Louisville, because of its size and location, was an exception to the rule. Vital Catholic community centered in Nelson County flourished in Kentucky from the earliest pioneer days. But now, even some rural Kentuckians come to adulthood without encountering a Catholic or a foreigner. Louisville, because of its size and location, was an exception to the rule. It deals with the single most violent ethnic episode in Kentucky history. This is Wallace S. Hutchian Jr., the Louisville Riots of August 1855. In the book, Kentucky Through the Centuries. I think this is actually a better introduction to Bloody Monday, August 6, 1855. It happened in Louisville. Okay, and this is the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant racist bastards, right? Were murdering Catholics. The fucking the shitheads, the fucking, you know, not the Krauts. The people were calling them Krauts. So just a racist, bigoted, stuck up. Describe it as a totalitarian, right, fascist. And a lot of times fascists like to use racism, right, to find their scapegoat. So a lot of the arguments of saying that you have all these immigrants coming in, well, they bring all this disease, right? You had the Irish famine, so you had all these new people coming in, and they're like saying all these Irish people, they're going to bring in, you know, they're going to bring in disease, and they're going to bring in more poor people and criminals and insane people. There hasn't been any, there wasn't a big outbreak, there wasn't anything to actually say that, and actually the numbers break down here of how many people was in Louisville at the time, because there's only like 13,000 Germans out of 43,000. So really it's like there's not that many people in Louisville in 1850s. But they have a chart here that says compares the paupers and the criminals and the insane versus Missouri's foreigners and Louisiana's, and actually we had less paupers and less criminals and less insane. So Missouri, they got most of the, I guess, crap, and actually even the natives. There was a lot of native criminals and native, you know, insane people and native paupers. And just because, actually, who decides who's native and who's not, or who's insane and who's not? You had way more insane natives, and way more criminal natives, way more pauper natives in Kentucky all across the board. So the foreign elements didn't, compared to Missouri. Missouri, I don't know where they got this, but the paupers outnumbered the native paupers, so there was way more. So anyways, Kentucky didn't get the criminals, and Louisville didn't get the criminal and the insane and the pauper people. The 1850 census reveals significant data. Only 4% of Kentuckians were foreign-born. Okay, only 4% of all Kentuckians were foreign-born. This figure is very small when compared to other states such as New York with 21% and Massachusetts with 16%. In spite of Kentucky's minuscule proportion, its largest city, Louisville, had 12,461 foreign-born inhabitants out of a total city population of 43,000, i.e. almost 1 out of 3 Louisville residents was foreign-born. So 1/3 of Louisville, everybody's foreign-born. Why can't we just get along? But these Native American, these white Anglo-Saxon, these ain't Native Americans. I'm not even going to call them Native Americans, because the Native Americans, Shawnees, right? They killed the Native Americans. These people are colonizers. These people are bloody massacres, right? Bloody totalitarian fascists, evil, you know, bloody, right? I mentioned they murdered lots of people, right? So these are the people that murdered lots of people. So these foreign-born people didn't murder anybody. In fact, they're probably the ones who was identifying and saving these slaves and getting them to freedom. So Louisville had 12,461 foreign-born inhabitants out of a total city of 43,000. Almost 1 out of 3 Louisville residents was foreign-born. This group, broken down by country of origin, numbered. Okay, so these are the different groups of people in Louisville in 1850. In Germany, you had 7,000 Germans, and this is before Germany was created. So these are German-speaking people. These are the Prussians, Bavarians, right? They probably put them all together. These are the German-speaking people, 7,000. So the biggest minority group were Germans. And then you had Irish. You had 3,000. So you had 7,357 Germans, and then you had 3,105 Irish. So the two biggest minority groups, the number 1 was German, and the number 2 was the Irish. But Germans outnumbered the Irish more than double. But they were actually only half of the foreign-born people. So the foreign-born people, there's lots more foreign-born people who was in Louisville at the time. So I had a list of all the foreign-born people who was here, so we could see the other countries. It wasn't just Germany and Ireland; it was a whole, you know, swath. But miscellaneous was 2,000. So of the total population in Kentucky 1850, approximately 20,000 were Catholics. This was, of course, no specific proportional count of Catholics to foreign-born, but as more people arrived from Europe, the number of Catholics also increased. So, yeah, you got the European revolutionaries of 1848 coming in. That's who you got in 1855. You have lots of labor union organizers, revolutionary. August Willich came in. Karl Heinzen, who was a German revolutionary. Most were Germans, headed a labor union, published a doctrine in Harold des Weston's press activity was a factor that stirred up a lot of, Louisville Anzinger, 1855, Know-Nothing Riots, coming back.